The moment I heard Jack's voice, filled with contempt, my heart sank. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs in our two-story house, a place that once felt like a haven of love. Now, it was a stage for my humiliation. "Yeah, Mom, Amy is really getting on my nerves." Jack's voice drifted down the stairs, tinged with annoyance. "She thinks she's the boss just because she's the main breadwinner now. It's laughable." I clutched the banister, my knuckles whitening. This wasn't the first time I felt dismissed by Jack, but hearing him belittle me to his mother, Maria, was a new low. "I know, right? She's so full of herself lately." Maria's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "You should show her she's not irreplaceable. Maybe meet someone younger, more fun." A cold laugh escaped Jack. "That might just teach her a lesson. Amy's so smitten with me she wouldn't dare leave, no matter what." Their words cut through me like shards of glass. 6 years of marriage reduced to this mockery. I was Amy, a 31-year-old marketing executive, shouldering most of our expenses since Jack quit his job. And here he was, plotting betrayal with the same nonchalance as discussing the weather. I stepped back, retreating into the shadows, my mind racing. The loving, attentive man I married had turned into a callous stranger. But I refused to be his doormat. A fiery resolve ignited within me. I wouldn't just walk away defeated. I would make Jack regret every scornful word he had uttered. For years, I had ignored the subtle jabs, the gradual distancing, and the financial leeching. But no more. As I stood there, a plan began to take shape in my mind, a plan to reclaim my life and my dignity. I waited until Jack ended the call and came downstairs, his face changing into a mask of faint affection as he saw me. "Hey, honey," he said, planting a hollow kiss on my cheek. "How was your day?" His casual demeanor was a slap in the face. "It was fine, Jack," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "I just need to rest. It's been a long day." He shrugged, oblivious to the seismic shift happening right in front of him. "Sure. I'll be watching the game. Don't wait up," Jack said as he lounged on the sofa with the remote in hand. I retreated to our bedroom, but I wasn't there to cry or lament. I was planning my escape, my revenge. Jack had underestimated me for the last time. I picked up my phone and began to make a list of everything I needed to do to untangle my life from his. I would start tomorrow, no more being the oblivious, accommodating wife. It was time for Amy to take center stage in her own story. The days that followed were a masterclass in deception. I kept up appearances, playing the role of the dutiful wife while plotting my departure. Jack, wrapped up in his arrogance, noticed nothing. One evening, as we sat across from each other at dinner, the silence was suffocating. He was scrolling through his phone, chuckling occasionally. I pushed my food around my plate, my mind elsewhere. "Jack, remember when we used to talk during dinner?" I asked, a hint of nostalgia in my voice. He glanced up, eyes narrow. "What's there to talk about? It's not like you're interested in my day." His dismissive tone stung, but I didn't let it show. "I am interested, Jack. I always have been." He scoffed. "Right, just like you're interested in my career choices." I clenched my fists under the table. "I supported your decision to quit your job, Jack. I just didn't expect to become the only one working." Jack laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Oh, come on, Amy. You love being the martyr, don't you? The hard-working wife supporting her lazy husband." The accusation was ridiculous, yet it revealed his twisted perception of our marriage. "I never saw it that way, Jack, but I can't deny feeling alone in this relationship." His expression hardened. "Maybe you should find someone who can give you what you need. I'm clearly not enough." The words were a slap in the face, but they fueled my resolve. I was done being the victim in this twisted game. As the days passed, I began moving my personal belongings out of the house, little by little. I opened a separate bank account, redirecting my salary there. Every step was calculated and discreet. One night, as I lay in bed next to Jack, his snoring a constant reminder of our fractured union, I whispered to myself, "Not for much longer." I rose early the next day, my heart heavy but determined. As I was leaving for work, Jack called out from the kitchen, his tone unusually soft. "Amy, wait. Are we okay?" I paused at the door, my back to him. "We're fine, Jack. Just the usual stress." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it was necessary. I couldn't let him know what I was planning, not when I was so close to breaking free. That day at work, I made the final arrangements. I contacted a realtor and asked about a small apartment in a quiet part of town, a fresh start, a clean slate. I came home that evening to find Jack sprawled on the sofa with a beer in hand. "You're late," he remarked, his tone accusatory. I shrugged off my coat, keeping my face neutral. "Work was hectic, you know how it is." He snorted. "Yeah, right, busy being the big shot at the office." I ignored the jab and headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The mundane task was a welcome distraction from the turmoil within. As I chopped vegetables, my mind wandered to the life awaiting me, a life free from Jack's scorn and selfishness, where I was no longer invisible or insignificant. I served dinner, and we ate in silence. With each bite, I savored the fleeting moments of this facade. Soon it would crumble, and I would emerge from the rubble stronger and liberated. After dinner, as Jack lounged in front of the TV, I retreated to our bedroom. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The room, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a prison, but not for much longer. My plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. The next chapter of my life was about to begin, and I was ready. The days turned into weeks, each passing moment bringing me closer to my freedom. My facade as the complacent wife was flawless, even as my plans to leave Jack grew more concrete. He, wrapped in his bubble of arrogance, suspected nothing. One Friday evening, I arrived home later than usual, exhausted from a demanding day at work. Jack was in the living room, absorbed in a video game, a stark contrast to my own weary state. "Jack, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the fatigue. He paused his game, looking up with feigned concern. "What's up, Amy?" I took a deep breath, ready to confront him about the financial strain he had put on our marriage. "I saw the credit card statement today. There's a charge of over $10,000, Jack. What did you buy?" His face paled for a moment, then he shrugged nonchalantly. "Just some stuff I needed. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" My voice rose in disbelief. "Jack, you used my credit card without asking, and for such an amount?" He rolled his eyes, dismissing my anger. "Come on, Amy. It's not like we can't afford it. Besides, I'm your husband. What's yours is mine, right?" The audacity of his words left me speechless. This wasn't just disrespect, it was outright theft. My patience, already hanging by a thread, snapped. "This is unacceptable, Jack," I exclaimed, my voice echoing through the room. "You can't just use my money without my consent. This is financial abuse." Jack stood up, his demeanor shifting from dismissive to aggressive. "Oh, so now I'm an abuser? Great. I can't even buy a few things without getting lectured. You're so controlling, Amy." His attempt to turn the tables on me was pathetic. Controlling? I'm trying to have a responsible conversation about our finances, which you seem to have no respect for. He scoffed, crossing his arms. "You know what, Amy? I don't need this. I'm going out." With that, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out, leaving me alone in the midst of our shattered illusion of a happy marriage. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. This confrontation was the last straw. Jack's complete disregard for our financial stability, combined with his entitlement and lack of remorse, solidified my decision to leave. But it wasn't enough to just walk away. Jack needed to learn a lesson and understand the consequences of his actions. My plan for revenge began to take a more defined shape. Over the next few days, I acted as if nothing had happened, while internally, I was a whirlwind of activity. I documented all instances of Jack's financial irresponsibility, gathering evidence for the impending legal battle. Meanwhile, Jack continued his carefree routines, oblivious to the storm brewing. He returned to his lazy habits, occasionally throwing a snide comment my way. But I was no longer the Amy who took his insults lying down. With each passing day, my resolve grew stronger. I was ready to reclaim my life and teach Jack a lesson he would never forget. Weeks slipped by, and the facade of our marriage continued a thin veil over the growing chasm between Jack and me. My plans, however, were solidifying, each step meticulously calculated. It was a waiting game, a game I was determined to win. One lazy Sunday afternoon, Jack lounged on the couch, his attention fixed on a football match. I approached him with faint casualness, a rehearsed question on my lips. "Jack, have you thought about looking for a job? It might help with our finances," I suggested, keeping my tone light. He barely glanced away from the TV. "Why bother? You're earning enough for both of us. Besides, I enjoy my free time." His dismissive response stung, but it was no surprise. "Sure, but it's not just about money. It's about contributing, being a team." I pressed on, hoping to gauge his reaction. Jack snorted, his eyes still on the screen. "Team, Amy? Let's not kid ourselves. You like being in charge, and I like things as they are. Why change a winning formula?" His words were a bitter reminder of how little he respected our partnership. I hid my frustration, nodding as if I agreed. "You're right, Jack. Why change anything?" As he immersed himself back into the game, I turned away, hiding the cold resolve in my eyes. It was clear now Jack would never change, never be the partner I needed. The following days were a blur of silent preparations. I met with a lawyer in secret, discussing the possibilities of divorce and financial separation. I documented every instance of Jack's financial irresponsibility, his neglect, and his emotional abuse. Meanwhile, Jack continued his life, unaware of the storm brewing. He spent his days in idle leisure, occasionally throwing a barbed comment my way, believing I was too weak to fight back. But I was no longer that person. Each of his jabs only strengthened my resolve. The Amy he thought he knew was about to shatter his complacency. One evening, as we sat at dinner, Jack's phone buzzed incessantly. He glanced at the screen, a smirk spreading across his face. "Something funny?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite myself. "Just a friend from the gym. We're planning a night out this weekend," he replied, his tone dismissive. I nodded, feigning indifference. "Sounds fun. Enjoy yourself." Little did he know, that weekend would be my chance. While he was out living his carefree life, I would execute my plan. The day arrived, and I watched as Jack left, dressed up and full of anticipation for his night out. As soon as the door closed behind him, I sprang into action. I had already packed my essentials, things he wouldn't notice were missing. I called the movers I had secretly hired, confirming the time for the next day. My new apartment was ready, a sanctuary from the life I was about to leave behind. That night, I lay in our bed for the last time, my mind racing with the events to come. I felt a mix of fear, excitement, and relief. This was the beginning of my new life, a life free from Jack's shadow. Tomorrow, I would confront him with my decision. But tonight, I savored the last moments of this chapter, ready for the dawn of a new beginning. I enjoyed the quiet before the storm, the last moments of an old life about to be left behind. The morning was bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. Today was the day I would finally break free from Jack's manipulative grasp. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination as I prepared for the confrontation. Jack stumbled in late that morning, reeking of alcohol and arrogance. He flopped onto the sofa without a greeting. I steeled myself and walked into the living room. "Jack, we need to talk," I said firmly, my voice cutting through the silence. He squinted at me, clearly hungover. "What now, Amy? Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't wait," I replied, my resolve hardening. "It's about our marriage, or what's left of it." He scoffed, rubbing his temples. "What about our marriage? You're not happy with me lounging around the house." "It's more than that, Jack. I said, my voice steadied despite the storm inside. It's about respect, partnership, and trust, all of which have been absent for too long. Jack sat up, a sneer forming on his face. Oh, here we go. The great Amy, always so perfect and judgmental. What's your point? I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the truth I was about to unleash. My point, Jack, is that I'm done. I'm leaving you. His expression shifted from disdain to disbelief. Leaving me? You're joking, right? I shook my head, a sense of liberation washing over me. No joke, Jack. I can't live like this anymore. I refuse to be treated as an afterthought, a bank account for your whims. Jack's face reddened, a mix of anger and wounded pride. You can't leave me, Amy. You think you can do better? You think you'll find someone who will put up with your controlling ways. His words were a desperate attempt to regain control, but they fell flat. It's not about finding someone else, Jack. It's about finding myself, something I lost the day I started letting you walk all over me. He stood up, towering over me, his voice laced with venom. Fine, leave. See if I care. You'll come crawling back, you'll see. I met his gaze, my own eyes unwavering. I won't be crawling back, Jack. This is goodbye. I turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing in stunned silence. My heart raced with a mix of fear, relief, and exhilaration. I was finally taking control of my life. The movers arrived, and I supervised the removal of my belongings, each item a piece of my new life. I was building a new life. Jack watched from the doorway, his face a mask of shock and resentment. As the last box was loaded into the van, I turned to face him one last time. Goodbye, Jack. I wish you all the best. His eyes burned with a mix of anger and disbelief, but he said nothing. I climbed into the van, not looking back as we drove away from the house, the life, and the man I was leaving behind. The sense of freedom was overwhelming. I was starting a new journey, one where I was the author of my own story. Jack was now a chapter of my past, a lesson learned. As the van pulled up to my new apartment, a small, modest space filled with potential, I stepped out into my new world. A world where I was no longer Amy, the neglected wife, but Amy, the woman who reclaimed her life. Settling into my new apartment felt like taking a deep breath after being submerged underwater for too long. The freedom was exhilarating, yet the looming confrontation with Jack cast a shadow over my newfound independence. Several days passed in a blur of adjustment and anticipation. Then the inevitable happened. Jack's number flashed on my phone. I steeled myself and answered. Amy, where the hell are you? You think you can just leave like that? Jack's voice was a mix of rage and disbelief. I replied calmly, I'd already told you, Jack. I'm done. Our marriage is over. You can't just decide that on your own. You're my wife. He spat out the words, his anger palpable. I was your wife, Jack, and yes, I can decide. I won't be a part of a marriage where I'm disrespected and used, I countered, my voice firm. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. You'll come back. You need me. I couldn't help but laugh, a sound of genuine amusement. Need you, Jack? I've been the one carrying us for years. I don't need you. It's the other way around. His voice cracked with a mixture of fury and desperation. You can't do this to me, Amy. What about our finances, the house? You can't just leave me with nothing. That's not my concern anymore, Jack. You should have thought about that before treating me the way you did. I said, the satisfaction of finally speaking my mind liberating. There was silence on the other end, and then he hung up. I stared at the phone, a sense of finality washing over me. I had closed the chapter on Jack, but I knew this wasn't the end. There would be legal battles ahead, but I was ready for them. I was fighting for myself now. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations and paperwork, but each step brought me closer to my new life. I filed for divorce, citing Jack's financial irresponsibility and emotional neglect. He responded with a flood of angry calls and messages, each one more desperate and vindictive than the last. You'll regret this, Amy. You can't just throw me out like garbage," he yelled during one heated call. I remained calm. "I'm not throwing you out, Jack. I'm setting myself free. And as for regret, I only regret not doing this sooner." As the legal proceedings progressed, Jack's true colors showed brighter than ever. He tried to manipulate the situation, paint himself as the victim, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. The day of the final hearing arrived, and I stood in the courtroom, a mix of nerves and determination. Jack was there, his face a mask of defiance and resentment. The judge reviewed our case, the documentation of Jack's financial abuse, and my testimony about our marriage's breakdown. The verdict was swift and in my favor. I was granted a divorce and a fair settlement. Jack's face contorted with rage as the judge announced the decision. "This isn't fair. She can't just take everything from me." But his protests fell on deaf ears. The decision was final. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. I had won not just the case, but my freedom. As I started my car and drove away from the courthouse, I didn't look back. Jack was a part of my past now, a reminder of what I had overcome. Ahead of me lay a road of possibilities, a future where I was in control. I smiled to myself, a sense of peace settling over me. The battle was over, and I had emerged victorious. It was time to start living my life on my own terms. The days following the divorce were a mix of relief and rebuilding. I, Amy, had stood up for myself in a way I never thought possible. Yet the echoes of my broken marriage with Jack lingered, a reminder of the battles I had fought. I was settling into my new life, embracing the peace that came with it, when my phone rang one evening. The screen flashed Jack's name, a ghost from the past I thought I had left behind. Reluctantly, I answered. "Jack, why are you calling?" His voice came through, laced with bitterness. "You think you can just take everything from me and walk away, Amy? You've ruined my life." I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. "Jack, the court made its decision. It's time for both of us to move on." He scoffed. "Move on? How can I move on when you've left me with nothing? I'm struggling to make ends meet because of you." The accusation was absurd, yet it didn't surprise me. "You're responsible for your own situation, Jack. I simply stopped enabling your behavior." His voice rose, filled with desperation and anger. "You owe me, Amy. After everything I did for you, you owe me." I felt a twinge of anger, but kept it in check. "You did nothing but take me for granted, Jack. I don't owe you anything." There was a pause, then his voice came through quieter but still venomous. "You'll pay for this, Amy. You haven't seen the last of me." I ended the call, a sense of unease settling over me. Jack's threats were likely empty, but they reminded me of the man I had once loved, now a stranger consumed by bitterness. Weeks passed, and I threw myself into my work, finding comfort in the routine. My colleagues noticed the change in me, the newfound confidence and determination. I was promoted, a recognition of my hard work and resilience. But as I climbed the corporate ladder, Jack's shadow loomed. He started a smear campaign, spreading lies and rumors about me to our mutual acquaintances. I heard whispers of his accusations, painting me as the heartless ex-wife who had stripped him of everything. I confronted these challenges head-on, refusing to let Jack's pettiness derail my progress. I had fought too hard to reclaim my life, to let his bitterness taint it. One afternoon, I received a call from a mutual friend, hesitantly relaying a message from Jack. He was struggling financially, facing eviction, and in a moment of desperation, he reached out to me. I listened, a mix of pity and resolve in my heart. "Tell Jack I wish him well, but his choices are his own. I can't help him." As I hung up, I realized how far I had come. The old Amy might have rushed to Jack's aid, but I was no longer that person. I had learned the hard way that you can't help someone who refuses to help themselves. I continued to build my life, finding joy in the little things. I reconnected with old friends, explored new hobbies, and started dating again. Life was moving forward, and I was at the helm. Jack's attempts to drag me down continued, but they no longer held power over me. I had risen from the ashes of our marriage stronger and more determined than ever. As I sat in my apartment one evening, reflecting on my journey, I felt a sense of peace. I had faced my demons, fought my battles, and emerged victorious. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, I was truly happy. I was genuinely excited for what lay ahead. Life had found a new rhythm, and mine was no different. The scars of my past with Jack were still there, but they no longer defined me. I was Amy, reborn from the ashes of the life I had left behind. My promotion at work brought new challenges and opportunities. I thrived in the environment, my confidence growing with each successful project. My social life also took a positive turn. I met new people, some of whom became close friends and even started dating again. Life was good, but the shadow of Jack still lingered at the edge of my newfound happiness. One evening, while having dinner with a friend, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it. It was from Jack. "Amy, I need your help. Please." The words were simple but carried the weight of our shared history. I showed the message to my friend, who looked at me with concern. "You don't owe him anything, Amy. Remember that." I knew she was right. I had moved on, but it seemed Jack was still stuck in the past. I didn't reply to the message. Instead, I blocked the number and tried to focus on the present. The next day, I heard the news. Jack had hit rock bottom. He had lost his home, his friends, and was struggling to find work. Part of me felt pity for him, but another part knew this was the result of his own actions. I continued with my life, the memory of Jack fading into the background. My days were filled with work, friends, and the occasional date. Life was moving forward, and I was content. 2 weeks later, I bumped into a mutual acquaintance who had kept in touch with Jack. "He's not doing well, Amy," she said, her expression somber. "He's lost everything. He's even talking about leaving town." I listened, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Jack had been a significant part of my life, but he had also been the source of much pain. His downfall was his own doing, a result of his choices and actions. "He made his bed," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I hope he finds what he's looking for." As I walked away, I realized that Jack's downfall was his own karma. He had chosen his path, and now he was facing the consequences. It was a harsh reality, but it was not mine to bear. Months passed, and life continued. I heard bits and pieces about Jack's situation now and then, but they no longer affected me. I had moved on, building a life that was mine and mine alone. One day, as I sat in my office looking out at the city's skyline, I reflected on my journey. I had faced hard times, fought for my dignity, and emerged stronger. I had learned to stand up for myself, to demand respect, and to walk away from negativity. I had also learned to forgive, not for the sake of those who had wronged me, but for my own peace. Holding on to anger and resentment only weighed me down. I had let go, and in doing so, I had found freedom. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the city, I smiled. I was happy, truly happy. My past with Jack was just that, the past. Ahead of me lay a future full of possibilities, a future I was ready to embrace.